There's a theory called the strength of weak ties. And what it means is that if you spend time only with your close group of friends and people who are exactly the same as you, your next opportunity is not going to be very big because it's going to be similar to what you're doing today. But if you broaden your horizon and spend time with people who are different, expose you to different groups of people, different ideas, your next opportunity could be that much bigger.
Hey y'all, welcome to Selling with Social, the podcast that helps marketers increase marketing qualified leads, sales reps to shatter sales results, and sales leaders to grow as leaders. Each show, we interview sales, marketing, and social media practitioners, leaders, and influencers to help you connect, close more deals, build stronger relationships with clients, and improve your sales productivity. I'm Mario Martinez Jr. You're now listening to Selling with Social. Paul Teshima, CEO, co-founder of Nudge. I am very excited, my friend, that you're joining me here today on Selling with Social. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Mario. I'm excited to be here.
So the man, the myth, and the legend, the guy who creates, or one of the gentlemen who creates Eloqua that was sold off to Oracle for lots of moolah, and then turns around and starts this really cool AI company called Nudge. How long did you take a break for? Was it months, years? I mean, how long did you take the break?
I should have taken years, but I actually only took a couple months off, and my co-founder Steve Woods took a couple of weeks off, which I think is what made me get back in the saddle faster. And it's been great so far.
So it's in your DNA. It's in your blood. You just can't stop bringing to market great solutions to the marketplace, huh?
I'd say it is, although this is only our second one and we're still working on it. But yeah, I think we have a real flavor for entrepreneurship and helping change the market.
Fantastic. Do us a favor. We've got sales, we've got marketers, we've got sales enablement and business owners. Tell us a little about you and about Nudge and your background and about Nudge.
Yeah, so I've been working in the marketing and sales technology space for now almost, 17 years. And I started out as an engineer. I love salespeople. I love working with marketers. And I love building technology that helps them get better at their jobs and grow. And so when we spent all that time first at Eloqua working with marketing organizations, we couldn't help peer over the wall and see all those great salespeople. And time again, we noticed that the best salespeople built these incredible relationships with their customers and use their network as part of that process. And so we wanted to build something the second time that helps sales do a better job with their relationships.
And thus the creation of Nudge. So tell me a little bit about Nudge and your mission there.
Yeah, so I think Nudge, our values is that we believe that your network is your net worth. So that over the course of your career as a seller, you really should be investing in your network. You should be nurturing it. You should be making sure you're staying in touch with the right people. And that can help you in a business-to-business setting because, as you know, some of the best relationships, best deals are done through the network and through relationships. Yeah. And so we built Nudge to help you as a relationship intelligence platform, make sure that you find and grow the right people that eventually turn into great customers.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And, it's interesting when we talk to those that have been on the sales side and those that have been on the marketing side, there's a lot of folks nowadays that are, can't help but to peer over that wall, right? And you're from the marketing lens, you're looking at what's going on with sales. And from the sales side, you're looking at what's going on with marketing? What are you doing for me, right? And really those two worlds have, in my opinion, we're at that intersection point where they have to come together and they have to start thinking about the buyer in a different way, whether it's outreach or whether it's inbound or whether it's prospecting or networking events. Like we have to be thinking about it in a very different way. And I think that's what attracted me to you guys is how you're bringing some of the insights directly to the salesperson, which, by the way, marketing should know a lot of these different types of insights as well, right? To adjust the marketing plan. And that's what I was pretty excited about to get you on this podcast here with Selling with Social. And as I mentioned, we've got a very diverse group of listeners. So, before we get into, some of the things related to sales and sales process and, how the world of sales has changed, talk to me a little bit first and just more on this idea of entrepreneurship and companies. What is the biggest difference between the first company that you did, which was the first startup, Eloqua, and now with Nudge? What do you see are some of the main big differences from starting companies from way back when to present?
I think there's a couple. I think first off, the landscape in terms of technology companies has totally changed. I mean, back then we were probably one of maybe 5 or 10 SaaS players in the cloud. And we were, we spent most of our time trying to build thought leadership on why a marketing platform was important. today there's, I think, $4.6 billion of venture invested in sales productivity tools.
Yeah.
So we probably have another 600 startups that are in sort of quote unquote our space. And so it's a much different world in terms of how you try and think about differentiating and getting to the buyer. I think the other part about switching from then to now is that, back then, if I didn't know something, I would just bang my head against the wall 90 times until I figured it out. And that's where all the long hours came from. Today, I'm older, wiser, and I get tired easier. So I ask my network and I ask people I know to help me when I need it much sooner.
Yeah, that's very true. Also, we have I think one of the challenges that I see is our patience is a lot lower, right? Especially with the idea that I want information right now. I want it at my fingertips. Like I can Google it. Anything you don't know, you Google it, right? Anything you want to find out how to, you Google it. As compared to when I was growing up, and obviously yourself as well, 21 years ago, starting out with sales, right? You tried things and if it didn't work, you'd throw it at the wall and see if it stuck, right? And then you replicate and duplicate. But now there can be a lot more scientific approach to both selling as well as marketing. Talk a little bit about some of the scientific changes of things data points that are out there now that allow me as a seller to maybe have better information or better equipped to be able to engage with a buyer.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I think first off, the big shift, which started with the Eloqua movement and marketing automation, was this idea that the buyer was taking more control of earlier parts of the selling process, right? So searching on Google, finding things out, trying to get information from their influencer network. And, I think OpenView today says that 84% of all B2B deals start with a referral process. Do you imagine that 84% of all of them start with someone referring someone, and only 16 go to out themselves to try and figure it out? And so that's a very small population for a sales team to go after if they don't already have an in through their network. I think what's one of the hardest things that a seller has to figure out today, and I think Lars Nilsson, who's one of our advisors, said this quote, which I love, is today the hardest part of closing any deal is actually finding it. Yeah. And I think that is true. And I think you're nodding your head, and this big outwave with automated outreach has started because we've got to get to more people as fast as we can because it's really hard to get into those deal cycles.
Yeah. So what are some of the solutions then to that, right? If you got, it's harder. We all hear it. We believe it. I believe it. Most of our listeners probably believe it as well, right? I just got off a podcast myself. I was a guest on a podcast this morning, and I said, the buyer has changed in the last 2 years more than the last 21 that I was in, 10, 5, whatever the number is. And it's a lot harder to get the attention. And that's why we need to practice a multi-channel approach or an omni-channel approach to prospecting, right? So what are some of the solutions that you see in store for sales right now?
Well, this is where I got really excited originally about AI. And so, a lot of people think about AI as something where, it's a bot talking on your behalf to a buyer. But the truth of it is that a lot of what AI can do is behind the scenes, almost the grunt work. So the good news story is, even though the buyers are hard to get to, their digital footprint of what they think and what they're doing is more present than ever, right? Whether it's in social, whether it's on their corporate site, whether it's in their personal channels. And so using something like AI to go out and do the heavy lifting of the grunt work of like the research, the understanding, the what's going on in their world, in their company, is something that I think is a great application because as a salesperson, you can't go through 5,000 Google alerts every day, but you can use AI to do that work and then spend the real time building that relationship and trust that you need to. And so I think that's one of the prime things that has happened is to use that for that part of the solution.
Well, a great example of that is I have alerts set up on my name, Vengreso, social selling, digital selling. I have all these alerts that come in, and I'll be honest with you, this sounds very much egotistical, but unless it says my name on it, it's captured something from my name, I don't have the time to go through that. And I'm deleting. And every once in a while I'll open it up and I'll scan through to see is there anything important related to the industry that I'm trying to go after, right? And so it's a lot of content. It's a lot of information. So how do I, as a seller, how do I make heads or tail of this? There's so much data out there. We talk all the time about before you walk into a meeting, you better have done at least at a minimum 3 things in 3 minutes, right? I can go to LinkedIn profile. I can go to Twitter. Are we just focusing on social, or is there more content that's out there that tools like Nudge, as an example, will bring in to create more valuable points of reference for me?
I mean, there are. I mean, that's where the brilliance of AI can come into it. I mean, AI today can read hundreds of thousands of pieces of content every day and not just look for, hey, other people named Mario, but actually understand those words and say, is this the most important article about Mario today? And is it something that as a salesperson, I'd want to know because it represents a buying opportunity or a buying trigger or a buying event? And so it can be smart enough to do that distillation every day at very high scale. And so what you can then do is say, okay, I've got this great information. I've only had to read one piece. Let me now focus on the other aspects of preparing for the call or the meeting, which AI can't do. The science of how I go about selling, my presentation skills. And so that's where it really does free up more of your time to do the stuff that you like to do.
You know, one of the other problems, and I'd be curious to see how you guys are solving it or what you think might be a solution to this problem. We hear this all the time from the sales reps that we work with, right? We've done up to almost 80,000, over 80,000, professionals that we've trained in digital and social, 2,000 companies.
That's incredible. Wow.
One of the big challenges that we see, thank you. One of the big challenges that we see is salespeople say, well, I can pull all this information in, right? I can see all this data, or I can go out and research. But what do I do with it when I see it? Like if I see that Paul, as an example, has written a new article, right? Like what's important to me? Do I have to sit there and read 50 of his articles that he's written, right? To find that one nugget? Or is there anything that's out there that can help me correlate? Like here's this piece of content that the company has written. Here's what Paul's been talking about. Let's marry the two together. And here's 3 pieces of content that you might want to think about engaging with Paul on. Is that out there today? Or is that maybe a future thing that Nudge might be bringing to the market?
I mean, it's out there today. The error bars are pretty big, to be fair, whether it's us or someone else. I mean, because often I find, and you probably know this as someone who understands sales, there's always a third piece in someone's brain to determine this is the right piece to send to that buyer. There's something in the brain that it's your style, or it's your approach, or it's because you know something about their business that says this is the right piece of content. The third element that I think is just as interesting to bring up is actually relationships. So there's nothing that proxies trust like a mutual relationship, shared relationship, especially if it's strong. Yeah. And one of the challenges with LinkedIn today, although a fantastic business network that we're all on, is that connected does not mean connected anymore. It means absolutely. And so using AI to figure out strength of relationships in a way that's meaningful and saying, this person actually knows your buyer really well and you know them really well, is a great way to proxy trust at the start of an engagement. And that's something that we really train on as well.
Yeah, interestingly enough, when you look at those relationships on LinkedIn, as an example, LinkedIn ranks those relationships based upon what LinkedIn believes as the best person to start with first, right? To ask for a referral. But in almost, 8 out of 10 times, it's never the best person, because what you don't know is that, as an example, if sales rep's selling to you, Paul, and you and I are connected, they may not know that we're BFFs and we probably wouldn't talk on LinkedIn, right? We would be texting back and forth, right? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that particular regard in regards to relationships. But you hit the nail on the head. And that is, you quoted a quote earlier, and that was 84% of the conversation or sales opportunities start as a result of the referral process. Did I get that right?
That's right.
Yeah. And who was that by?
That was OpenView. OpenView Ventures did a study across lots of thousands of buyers.
And so, your network is your net worth, right? It's something that we believe in as well. So does that mean then that I should just get out there and start connecting with everyone? Is that kind of the idea of what we're telling salespeople to do? Or what's the targeted approach that you would recommend for salespeople or a sales leader that should tell their salespeople?
It's a hard balance, because at the end of the day, you got a number you got to hit in the quarter, right? So I'm not advocating spending 90% of your time building relationships that you don't know will result in deals. We do advocate this concept of one nudge a day. So if there's one person that you can nudge, help in your network that is meaningful to you, it doesn't have to be an immediate deal that'll come forward. You're going to find that over time that builds a wealth of goodwill as you start to develop and go and broaden your career. And so whether it's, for example, I was on a call today with an old partner back from the Algo days. So I haven't talked to this person in 7 years. And we had a great chat. He's on a new business. He's had a great success at the current business he was at. And he said to me, you know what, I'd love to help you guys out, if nothing else, because you helped me out back 7 years ago. So that's a long payback cycle. I can't tell every rep to count on that. Yeah. But if you understand, if you just do one small little nudge a day, it can add up.
That's going to be a subheading for our show notes. It's going to be called One Nudge a Day. I like that. That's a great concept. And give me an idea of what a nudge is. Is it an outreach to an individual, a request to be introduced to somebody? Is it a tweet? What is a nudge?
So what we classify nudges as an authentic reach out. And what I mean by that is it's not just liking their birthday announcement on Facebook, right? It's just taking the time to craft even one sentence. Thank you for this, or I saw you got this, that's great. Or it could be more meaningful. I thought you'd be interested in this article as I read it and we were talking about it before. 6 months ago, we were chatting about it. So obviously there's various degrees of effort there, but all it has to be is an authentic outreach. It doesn't have to even end up with an action or a call to action at the end. And you'll be surprised how that does come back.
And given the fact that, as an example, Nudge, you guys integrate into various different CRM tools like a Salesforce as an example. are you able to look at this and say, okay, Mario Martinez, he made a phone call to Billy Bob, right? And start serving up insights that says, hey, you've called, you've emailed, you've sent a text, whatever. Maybe it's now time to send a video message, or maybe, is there any type of insights that you guys might bring to the table that helps me know which piece and which time to engage with?
Yeah, so we track this concept of losing touch. So the relationship that we track grows and decays over time. And it's not just based on raw activity count. There's a lot that goes into the science of it. Today, we track over 46 million business relationships. And so we've gotten pretty good at understanding what's a strong relationship, what's a medium, what's a weak, and how it grows and decays over time. And so you and I are having a great chat today. But if I don't talk to you for a while, the relationship should die off. And eventually Nudge will say, hey, you haven't talked to Mario in a while. You should think about this. And here's something that here's where he was in the news. And here's something that's interesting that he said he wanted to hear about. Why don't you send it on to him? And so we do that concept of reminding, or that nudge reminder, based on losing touch.
And I think that's the missing link, right? So many of us as salespeople, we go in, we're looking for the opportunity, look, find something, doesn't turn out. We walk away, right? Or we lost the deal, or, it went cold, or, no money, no budget, whatever. And then all of a sudden we're on to the next, and we forget all about the work that we put in to build this relationship over the course of time, albeit whether it was weeks or months or years. And we move on to the next opportunity without ever really thinking backwards in time that, oh, by the way, just because they didn't say yes today doesn't mean that they're not going to say yes tomorrow, right? Or just because they bought from somebody else today doesn't mean that it wasn't an utterly, painful experience in 6 months from now. And so I think that's like one of the missing links, is that even in our own CRM systems, our CRM systems are only going to say, hey, reminder to call Paul based upon what I told it to remind me, in X number of months from now. And that's, I think, a critical element to the world of sales and what's needed. So I want to kind of switch gears, going back to, we started on this path and I took you off it, but going back to like building and managing our own networks, right, of individuals that we're connected to. How do we do that? What's the best role to do that? And what do you think the formula for salespeople should be to build out our networks?
Well, I think the first thing that I've learned that's both at Nudge and before is that there's this mistaken idea that you should be networking with people based on role or title or who you're selling to, and it doesn't work. You have to be networking on authentic, overlapped, or shared interests and passions. And what I mean by that is, if you and I both find out that we both love kiteboarding, and it's true, it's a good thing to talk about. It's easy. We can have a real conversation about it. It's not forced. And if that ultimately leads into more discussions around business and other things, great. It could also be an overlapping business interest. But that is one of the main principles I would suggest, is when you are building and nurturing your network, do it with people that you enjoy spending time with. You never know what's going to happen regardless of their role or title. Okay. I think the second thing is this idea that, today, if you have looked at all your connections, one thing we know is that 90% of all of those are not real relationships. So if you have like 10,000 contacts or 10,000 connections in LinkedIn, 90% aren't going to be real. The other thing you want to do is focus on some of the weaker ties. There's a theory called the strength of weak ties. And what it means is that if you spend time only with your close group of friends and people who are exactly the same as you, your next opportunity is not going to be very big because it's going to be similar to what you're doing today. But if you broaden your horizon and spend time with people who are different, expose you to different groups of people, different ideas, your next opportunity could be that much bigger. And so that's the second principle that I would say, is spend some time with the weaker ties.
So give me an idea of how I'd execute on this. When you say weaker ties, should I go through my LinkedIn connections and look at, maybe you said not to focus on titles, but look at all the VPs of sales. I sell to salespeople. Look at all the VPs of sales. Who have I not spent time with? Who have I not had a conversation with? And then create some outreach based upon that? Or what's the formula?
I think so. I think on the first thing, a lot of people, forget about Nudge for a second. A lot of people build this concept of like a top 200, top 100 spreadsheet of people they really, really care about. Yeah. The weak ties element is, and this is what I do, is I take one short coffee or meeting a month that is inbound from someone I don't know. I don't have a very strong relationship with. Someone I lightly know I've been introduced to, and I don't have a strong affinity necessarily with them today. Yeah. So it could be as simple as that. And then you'll be surprised how that sometimes turns into another referral or another intro that can go to another one that could lead to something very, very big.
Yeah. I'm going to give you a real life example of this, Paul. And great example is I was connected to a VP of sales and marketing for a very large company. And this company has over 18,000 employees. And this individual connected with me about 5 months ago, I think it was, maybe 6 months ago. And we had actually never had a conversation. However, the one thing I did notice was, as I'm following him and seeing what he's engaging with, is I noticed that he was liking a lot of our content. And so that was my first trigger point. Okay, he's engaged with our company content. That's good. He started engaging with my content. That's good. And I started looking at all of his content. I said, wait a minute. These guys sell large equipment to construction sites. But the content that he's engaging in is all around digital and all around social and all around video, like all the mainstream stuff, like to be able, new age type of sales methodologies. So I said, well, this is interesting. So I reached out to him and said, hey, Johnny, I haven't actually spent some time with you. Love to do a virtual coffee with you. Are you open to it? And he wrote, I'd love to. Right. And so the point is that this was very much a weaker tie. He clearly knew who I was based upon the content that I was sharing. He wasn't necessarily on my radar screen, but I reached out to him and lo and behold, there's a massive opportunity there for us to go after. Right. And interestingly enough, because he had been engaged with our content and he has this forward-thinking thought leadership, and I was able to see that through all the content that he was liking and engaging with, he actually has been on this track to find out more information over the last 9 months. And I came in month number 3 of his 9-month-long journey, right? Where we started engaging with content. So I guess the point is that was very much, to your point, a weaker tie, right? We were connected, but no real relationship, right? He was engaging with my stuff. And I took action on that after a couple of months to say, okay, now I can see a trend of what is going on. There may be something here. And the reality is we got on the phone and guess what? There's something there, right? There's something big there that we can potentially work on together. Is that the type of example that you're speaking of?
Absolutely, yeah. The idea that you never know, and sometimes it doesn't work out, but if you're doing just one a month, 15, 20-minute call, virtual coffee, that's great. The one I have is I met someone who had a shared interest because she wanted to go to Vancouver, and I've lived in Vancouver for 3 years for my grad school, and so I met her for coffee. 20 steps later, I end up with second row seats at the Pat Steelers opening at Foxborough. And I traced it all the way back to that first meeting. And I have a chart of it. It's called the Minesweeper effect. But someday I'll send it to you. But it's pretty incredible how that happened.
Wow. Yeah. I get you. So for salespeople, I think, if we were to give them something to walk away with, it would be to look at their network, look at the target audience they're going after, and then to, make a plan up, right? And would that plan be take 1 to 3 contacts per month and nudge them, if you would. See if it's almost like the concept of Facebook poke someone.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to nudge them and see if we can engage in a conversation because you never know, right? People may be interested. What do you think about this, though? Do you think the conversation I would have had with this VP of sales and marketing for this large organization, do you think it would have gone as easy if he had not seen content that I had been sharing and producing over the course of the last 4 months? Would I have gotten the same type of meeting and the warm acceptance to be able to have a meeting?
I don't think you would have necessarily. I mean, that goes to the part of what, social selling isn't just about selling. It's about putting out your own thoughts and ideas and being value added to the overall network. I'm not saying writing giant blog posts because no sales rep has the time of that. But if you find a piece of content that's interesting or resonates to your point of view, why not share it? Why not put it out there? Why not develop a bit of your own personality so that people are warmer to those conversations when you do engage? Yeah. Obviously, Vengreso, you guys do it at a totally different level. But
yeah. At mass scale.
That's right. Yeah. But I think that's part of what it is spending that little extra time to do that.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. Had I not had already been engaged with the network, it would have been hard because he would have not found a whole lot of value in terms of the content or in terms of an outreach if I had not had that content. And if that's proven to be true time and time and again, where we get people that come in all the time that say, I've been following you for 12 months, 4 months, 6 months, 18, 24, however long the journey's been. I'd like to have a conversation with you now because I've seen everything that you guys can do. So I think that's to those that are listening in, take Paul's advice and go nudge someone that is a weaker tie, right? And figure out how you can get back in front of these individuals and make sure that you're making your CRM systems work for you, or use Nudge as an example to be able to get you to get the right nudge at the right time. Listen, I want to talk about sales process, right? And this is, something that is for, if you ask any salesperson, it's the process. There's a methodology, there's a process, and then there's administration. And administration drives all of us crazy, right? From the sales perspective, but it's a necessary evil, unfortunately. What do you think has changed most in terms of the sales process from the days of Eloqua to now with Nudge and present modern day selling in 2018?
I think the sales rep has to be more value add than ever before. And I'll tell you why. Like today, if you were to ask a buyer, I don't think they believe differentiation exists in terms of messaging and marketing and products. I mean, they say today that the best way to differentiate a product is have an actual person try it. There's a stat by IDC where some crazy stat was 51% of all enterprise solutions are brought in by the end user with no IT evaluation to start. And so I think in this day and age, if you have companies that are putting out products where people can play around with, the salesperson moves much more to a value-add consultative role, much more to a quarterbacking role than ever before, because the buyer already is trying and playing around with the product that they're trying to sell them. And so I think that's a very different function than necessarily coming up to a buyer and actually having to set a new vision and a new playing field for something they don't even know about. That still does happen, but I just think that you're seeing more and more of these product-led sales strategies.
Now, let's take it up, into your multi-million-dollar types of solutions where maybe it isn't a product-led strategy. And I'm just trying to in the semiconductor industry, right? Or, you're buying, I don't know, space power and connectivity, hosting, database, storage, some of these things where, maybe they might be playing with the product or whatnot, but in many cases, they're buying big, giant dollar values worth of, stuff. Has that sales process then changed of the way from way back when till now?
I don't know if it's fundamentally changed in some of the larger enterprise type deals. At the end of the day, you had to set a vision, you had to find a business pain, you had to help solve that pain. I think the way you connect with that buyer has changed. It's much more digital than ever before. And the pace of information that they expect is much higher. I don't know if you would agree with that. But And they're just more well-informed. We do a series called How I Buy, and we interview execs across the world in different sectors. And the first thing they always say is, the first thing I'll do is go ask my peers about what they're doing. And then eventually I will talk to a salesperson. But they still expect a lot from that process.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. In fact, I was actually repeating a stat today to someone, and here's the stat. It says Google's number of index pages has grown from 1 trillion to more than 30 trillion in the last 7 years alone.
That's crazy.
Right? I just can't even fathom that idea. But the reality is what does that equal? Well, if you look at the content marketing industry, the content marketing industry has grown to be about a $10 billion to $12 billion marketplace in just the US alone, right? So we know to that end, right? Salespeople are saying, yeah. People are out there doing research. There's a lot of studies that say, 50 to 60% of the buyer's research has been accomplished before they pick up the phone. Yeah, that's garbage. That's not true. Well, the reality is that's, if you look on the marketing side of the house, that's exactly what's happening, right? They're out there researching. Or to your statement, I did 2 years ago, I hosted, as the former VP of sales for the software collaboration company I was working for, I hosted a live webcast that was being hosted in San Francisco, and it was 4 different CIOs, and it was called Entering into the Mind of the IT Buyer, right? And they gave an hour-long panel discussion all about how do you sell to me as a CIO? And at that time, we had Randy Spratt, who was the EVP, CIO, and CTO of McKesson Corporation, a direct report to John Hammergren, which is a Fortune 10 company, right? I think they're number 6 now, if I'm not mistaken. He just retired a year ago. But nonetheless, he was on the program, and he talked about, hey, I'm not going out and asking 4 or 5, 10 different sales reps to come in and give me their dog and pony. I'm picking up the phone and calling 3 of my trusted partners to say, what have you guys done? What have you used to solve this particular problem? And they're saying, Johnny, Billy, and Susie is who you would need to go talk to, or company A, company B, company C is who they're going to talk to. And those are the 3 companies that I'm going to go engage with, right? So to that end, I think a lot of in these big, large deals, referral-based introductions are still critical and they're still key. And I think they're ever so more important today because of the volume of data that is out there.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And can I ask you another question? Do you find, I find today, and I've seen studies by Gartner that support this, that no longer is the CEO ever making a decision on something. The days are gone where if you get to the CEO and you sell high enough, they'll say, we're doing this, go. It's always a pass down to 7 to 10 people and a buy by committee. And it's much harder for the salesperson to convince. They have to be spending a lot of time building that sort of sphere of influence. I don't know if you're finding that or seeing that with your customers.
100%. In fact, on that same exact Entering into the Mind of the IT Buyer panel, Randy Spratt and some of the other CIOs that were on the panel as well, Jill Von Berg, CIO of Calix, they said, it's very rare that I'm going to take a meeting with a sales rep, right? Sales rep constantly you got to sell to the C-suite, got to sell to the C-suite. No. You need to go sell to the manager and the director and maybe their VP who's going to have their head on the chopping block if this program goes wrong, right? And you need to make sure that you're going deep and wide into the organization, because by the time it gets to me, all I am is a rubber stamp against, does this match the strategy and does it match the budget? I may ask a few questions here or there, right, to make sure that we've got the right global strategy that's a benefit to the company. But by the time it gets to me, you should have been vetted out with all the folks at the bottom. And in fact, that's what many of our buyers will say today, is that if you haven't sold at these levels here, and you're only trying to sell up here, and those of you can't see my hand, Paul and I are here sitting in the same virtual room, low and high, right? If you're trying to only sell to the folks up here, you've alienated all of your real buyers who are the ones that are going to love you or hate you during implementation. So
and
I agree.
I actually read it. I'll just add on to that. I heard a study, and I should dig it up, that the number one criteria, actually, to your point, that they don't want to care about the speeds and feeds, right? The C-level is not going to get in the details of the decision. They're just high-level matching. Do we have the money? Is it fit our strategy? And then the third thing I hear is, did you treat my team well? In other words, did the team have a good experience with you is actually a huge decision factor for that. They know that team's going to be working with you, not the C-level. I'm not working with you.
Yeah.
And so if they feel there's a good chance of success. And so that's a third criteria that's come into play.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with you on that one for sure. Well, so the reality is when we look at the sales process, maybe the mediums by which we engage with has changed, but the process, in my opinion, go back 21 years ago, go back 15, 10 years ago, you still had a multi-sale approach, right? There were still at least 1 to 2 decision makers. Now it's governance models, committees, advisory boards, you got to get these decisions. So maybe it's got a little bit more complex, but the job is still the same. We've been talking about going deep and wide into a sales organization for as long as I've been selling, right? And that still rings true today. The problem is that stat I mentioned earlier about Google, right? 1 trillion to 30 trillion. There's so much more content out there. You're just making sure that you get the right content in front of the buyer at the right time. And that's now become a problem as well. But thus the need for being able to have solutions like Nudge, quite frankly, which is why I was so excited about getting you online on this podcast, because of what you guys can bring to the marketplace and helping a sales rep to be able to deliver at the right time in the right place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's what AI is there for. And whether it's Nudge or something else, it's to do that grunt work of sifting through those 30 trillion pages of content and figure out what makes sense for you.
Yeah. Well, I love this discussion, no doubt. Here's a couple questions I have for you. If someone's interested in getting a hold of you, should they tweet you? Should they LinkedIn with you? Should they email you? How can they get a hold of you, Paul?
I'm pretty good about taking LinkedIn requests if you send me a reason why. So at Paul Teshima, and then you can find me on Twitter at Paul Teshima, Teshima.
So we should send you a personalized message, not just the random hit the connect button, right?
Yes. Well, it depends. I'm still pretty good. If I feel there's a lot of mutual connections, I'll accept it. I mean, I'm finding LinkedIn as much as a publishing channel as a networking area. And so certainly the audience matters.
I love it. Well, make sure that if you do reach out to Paul, you say hashtag selling with social rocks. That's the name of the podcast right there. So, and Paul, I always like asking this one question to all my guests, and it is the all-time favorite movie that you may have.
I'm going to say one that probably a lot of people say, but it's Shawshank Redemption. It's got to be Shawshank Redemption for a couple reasons. One, I was always been a big Stephen King fan, not horror in general, but just Stephen King. And that movie's just got so many great characters in it and such a great story.
Yeah, it is a good storyline, that's for sure. I don't know if we've had Shawshank Redemption on here before.
Oh, really? Okay, well then fine.
This is our second season. I'm not sure if we have, now the lines start to get blurred. I don't remember, but I don't think so. I think you might be the first.
All right, well then I'm claiming it. I'm taking it first.
I love it. All right, fantastic, Paul. Thank you for joining me today on Selling with Social. It's been a great conversation, and we'll make sure that for those of you who are listening in, feel free to reach out to, by the way, Paul, give us the website if they want to find out more information about Nudge.
Yeah, it's just www.nudge.ai.
And if you have any questions, reach out to Paul. Thanks for joining me today, my friend.
Thanks, Mario, for having me. It's been great.
Thanks so much for joining me on that episode of Selling with Social. I hope you found as much value in that episode as I did. Here's what I want you to do next. Please go to www.vengreso.com. That's VENGRESO.com. VENGRESO.com. And make sure that you get access to our content. We've got the latest and greatest in digital sales, sales training, content marketing, and social selling strategies that are going to help you grow your sales pipeline. I look forward to having you on the next show of Selling with Social. Make sure you also go to Vengreso.com/podcast to be able to get access to the latest and greatest Selling with Social episodes, along with any of the other episodes that we've got from Social Business Engines with my friend and partner, Bernie Borges, along with Conversations with Phil with my friend and partner, Phil Gerbishak. Thanks again for joining on Selling with Social.